Hi guys, and welcome to the third episode of the Twisted Siblings podcast. I hope you're enjoying it so far. We've actually had some really good feedback across our socials. And if you have listened and you have enjoyed, please feel free to leave us a 5-star review. It really does help, and it takes like a matter of seconds. So without further ado, shall we go?
Let's go.
So today I'm going to be talking about Lawrence Singleton. So just before I start, do you know who he is?
I don't think I do, actually.
Really?
Yeah, I don't recognise the name. Maybe I will the story, but no, off the top of my head, I don't think I do.
Interesting. I really thought you would have known this. Maybe when I start getting into it, this story might ring a bell because I feel like it's quite a known story. So I think as the story goes on, hopefully it might ring a bell, because I would be very surprised if you haven't heard this story, because I do feel like you know all the stories. But he was an American serial killer, also referred to as the Mad Chopper. He actually was single-handedly one of the most disturbing cases that I think I've ever heard. But I feel like I am probably going to say that on every episode, because my mind is blown every time I research, hear a story, talk about a story, and I always think it gets worse. So I'm not being authentic. I just genuinely believe every time that I read one, then that's the worst, until I read the next one. So he was born July 28th, 1927. I don't know what star sign that makes him. I did actually tell you on the last one, Israel Keys, I think, was a Capricorn or something. But I'm not into my star signs, so I won't be able to continue that.
I think July 28th might be a Leo.
Yes, I think you're right, actually.
I'm August the 6th and I'm a Leo, so...
Well, there you go. I don't know what that says about your character. So there wasn't actually a lot when I was doing my research into him on his background, his upbringing. I couldn't really find a lot about him, to be honest. You can normally find a lot about them, because sometimes it can be the trigger for why they are this way, but not a lot on him. Some relatives and neighbours did think that he was in quotation marks, a ticking time bomb. Some neighbours that met him after his first time in prison had reported that they were aware that he'd been in prison, but beyond that they didn't know about the crimes that he'd committed. He was normally a friendly guy, and a woman even reported that her husband would go for a walk and Singleton would stay there with her toddler and puppy, and she wouldn't think any of it. One neighbour, Joyce West, had recognised Singleton when he joined the bowling league, as that was one of his hobbies, and taped a news programme on the show to show the other ladies on the league. She reported that after learning about the previous crime, her husband kept saying he's going to do it again, he would stay clear of him. So let's go into why he was in prison in the first place. So he worked as a merchant seaman, which is basically meant he transported goods or people overseas. He would tell the neighbours that he lived off his pensions and social security checks from the merchant marines. So let's go way back to the first crime that kind of put him on the map. So on September 28th, 1978, Mary Vinson was on her way home to her grandfather's house from right outside Modesto, California. And she was on her way to Corona, California. Again, if I'm pronouncing these wrong, it's because I'm from the UK and I don't know these locations properly. So the normal way to get around back then was to hitchhike. For us nowadays, this would be a massive red flag and something that you almost don't hear of unless it's like a necessity. But to them, it was really, really normal. You see a guy or girl on the side of the road and you avoid them because of the history, events and stories like this one. We all know now to avoid interactions with strangers at all costs, especially allowing them in or getting into a car with them. But back in 1978, this was a normal means of transport. Therefore, when Lawrence Singleton stopped in his blue van to offer a ride to Mary, she was one of the few standing waiting for a ride that day. Singleton stopped, smiled and asked Mary where she was off to. He then explained that it was actually a little bit out of his way, but it was no problem for him, so with that she just got in. This would turn out to be one of the biggest mistakes of her life, and now that she is in there was no turning back. Some of the other women that were waiting in the group with Mary asked Mary not to get in. They claimed that he gave off a bad vibe, but she got in anyway, feeling confident enough that she was able to take care of herself. The trip was a long trip, and although Singleton was a complete stranger to Mary, she felt safe enough that there was no immediate danger, that she actually drifted off on the journey. And when she woke up, she was unsure how long she'd been asleep for. However, she was certain that the man had definitely gone the wrong way, and it was a different way from what they both agreed. She noticed he had missed an important turn-off. Mary asked him to turn around immediately, and Singleton replied in a chill manner, claiming it was an honest mistake, and started to look for a place to turn around. So no immediate concerns. He admitted that he had made a mistake. Maybe a little red flag at this point.
Yeah.
He's a stranger, you don't know whether you can trust him.
I'm sure she'll be having like a little bit of a panic. Was she
Yeah,
asleep and she woke up and realised that they were going the wrong way?
Exactly.
Yeah,
so, and I think even if you are having a panic, you might not let on that you're having a panic.
Yeah. You don't want it to turn into a
cool.
situation like that.
No. So, after the issues with the wrong direction, they were back on track and headed in the right direction. At this point, they had been on the road for quite some time. Singleton explained he was pulling off to go for a wee. There was no immediate alarms to Mary, as it was a long journey and she did expect it. He pulled over the van to stop, and the two of them got out the van to stretch their legs. Mary had a sudden feeling when she noticed her shoelaces were undone that she probably should tie them. This was just a precaution, but as a just in case I need to run, these should be tied up. And she bent down to tie them up, and Singleton took a sledgehammer and struck her over the head.
Oh, God.
Yeah, so didn't take too long. He forced her to drink an unknown substance, but it was believed that there was some alcohol in there. Singleton continued to drive until he arrived further down a canyon, where his attack on Mary would continue. After tying her hands behind her back and brutally sexually assaulting her over and over again, and just when you thought things couldn't get worse, the red devil in Singleton came out. Singleton must have been really anxious that if he didn't kill Mary, she would be able to identify him and it would all be over for him. And obviously he couldn't allow that to happen. This is when Mary's story turns from horrific to terrifying. Singleton laid Mary on a rock and continued to hack off both of her arms from just above the elbows while she was conscious and aware of everything that was happening. Obviously, when I say conscious, she was awake, but she was probably in too much shock, you would hope anyway, that maybe her brain didn't register. The absolute fear and panic that must have been going through her is just unimaginable. Is this ringing a bell to you?
Yeah, I think it was from when you said she was with some other people at the stop and they told her not to get in. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I feel like there's not a lot of cases like this.
No.
But it's one of the most horrific ones, but we digress. After he butchered her and put her body through more than anyone should ever have to deal with, he assumed that she would have bled out and died. He chucked her down the canyon and stuffed her in a pipe, naked and covered in her own blood. At some point, Mary did lose consciousness and did nearly die from the loss of blood. However, the absolute hero that is Mary, who had some fight left in her, managed to come around. She knew if she didn't get up now, she never would get out of this situation and she would die here, naked and alone. She climbed out of the ravine where he had left her to die. When she eventually got out the road, she was tired, in shock and suffering from severe blood loss, but thankfully she caught the attention of a car driving past that stopped to help. This was actually not the first car that she caught the attention of. However, the first car didn't stop because they just saw a bloodied woman and they got scared and drove away. That could have been the difference between her surviving and dying.
Yeah, I guess it's understandable especially if you're on your own and you're a woman, but I just don't think I could drive past somebody who looked like they were in serious need of help. She must have felt absolutely awful when that car went past her. I can't imagine.
Yeah. I know, your hope, finally someone's there and then they drive past you. I can't imagine, but someone did stop to help, thankfully. They wrapped her in blankets and transported her. Miraculously, she was able to get to the hospital just in time to be saved. So she managed to survive, and Mary worked closely with the police and a sketch artist describing what Singleton looked like, and they were able to put together a sketch of Singleton and release it for everyone to see and keep a lookout for in case anyone recognised him, which luckily someone did. His neighbour came forward after seeing the image they released, and they were able to arrest him. He was put on trial, and Mary had to face her attacker. The judge came to a sentence. Now, this is what's going to really shock you, because this is where everything that you ever would hope for the justice system is just... Mary was failed here, I think. So they came to a sentence. A crime like this nowadays would see you in prison for life. However, Singleton was sentenced to just 16 years, and not only was he sentenced so low for the crimes he committed, but he got out on a reduced sentence and was free after just 8 years. 8 years for repeated sexual assault and cutting off someone's limbs to then just leave them there to die. It's just
disgusting.
It's just insane. But obviously it was a long time ago. Back then, there was no bill placing people in jail for maximum sentences, which involved torture. However, since Singleton's attack on Mary, there was a bill passed in 1987 called the Singleton Bill, and was created to prevent the early release when crime involved torture. Unfortunately, as he had already been sentenced, they were unable to use this on Singleton. If they were, then it would have prevented him to go on to be released, to roam free and take another life. Isn't that crazy? You could do that and be allowed out to roam free after 8 years, and not, like, no one... You could be talking to him, no one would know.
I know, 8 years is just nothing, is it?
No, I just think, like, 8 years... Oh, I don't know. But when he left prison, people would gather to shout and make noise, so he was well aware that he was not welcome in their town because of the monster that he is. So he was actually chased out of a few towns where he wasn't allowed to be. Singleton finally found a town he was allowed to live in. He lived on the ground of San Quintin in a trailer, and then finally back to his home state in Florida. He was constantly in trouble with the law for theft, but the charges were small, as the thefts were small. So he obviously hadn't been to prison and become a different guy. He was still getting in trouble, but they were like minor offences. So
the thing is, though, you think even if you were still getting in continual trouble for small things, the fact that you had committed a serious crime before shows that you've not been rehabilitated, and that you would be able to be given a harsher sentence for continuing to break the law.
Yeah, I think that in that case, if you've come out and you're still breaking the rules, that you should go back on your sentence and have some more added to it.
Yeah.
Like, I think it should be like they put all your offences together, and you're obviously not a changed man. You obviously haven't learned anything from prison. Like, off you go back.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, if they did look at stuff like that, then it could have prevented a lot. And I just think a lot of people were failed here, Mary especially being his first victim. But obviously, as I'll come to it in a minute, he does have another victim, which unfortunately wasn't as lucky as Mary. So I think it's just sad that someone's able to do that. But I know things are different now, and there is a bill now in place that prevents this from happening again. It's just sad that someone had to
lose their life or nearly lose their life for it to be introduced.
Yes. So this takes us now to 1990. So 911 get a call from a very disturbed and upset man claiming that there was a nude guy in an apartment covered in blood stabbing a woman. He told the 911 operator that the woman lay there lifeless. The woman who was being attacked was Roxanne Hayes, mother of 3, just trying to get by. She met with Singleton for just $20. Obviously, it was in America, which is why I'm saying dollars. When being questioned, Singleton claimed that she had tried to take more than was agreed. A struggle broke out, and he was just trying to take the knife off of her, which wound up with her being stabbed multiple times.
Not really much of a defence, is it?
No, and if that was the case, why was he continuing to stab her when she was there lifeless?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously he wasn't fooling anyone. Everyone was aware of his evil crimes in the previous year and that he hadn't changed. It's just a shame that he was allowed out in the first place. Mary would fly to Florida to testify on Roxanne's behalf to make sure that Lawrence Singleton was never allowed to attack again. She explained in the court why she believed he should be given the ultimate punishment, and she said, quote, "I was raped, I had my arms cut off, he used a hatchet and left me to die." It took the jury a total of 4 hours to come to a decision. I don't know if that is quicker than normal or like what the average...
I think it is quite quick, isn't it? Because sometimes it can take days and sometimes it can even take weeks.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
So obviously this was like a high pressure kind of situation. They had a lot to go on. So it only took them 4 hours to come to this decision. And on April 1998, Lawrence Singleton was finally given what he deserved, the death penalty. He was serving a sentence and awaiting his death when he died in prison at the age of 74 of cancer. Not that we should give opinions, but I feel like that was too kind. I feel like there's no way he should have been able to die a natural death. You know, like a natural...
It just feels...
Something's happened to you.
It feels a little bit like there's not been proper justice, but I guess at least he's not here anymore to carry out any more of his crimes. And hopefully the fact that he was sentenced before he died can give a little bit of closure to his victim.
Yes, definitely. But yeah, it was a crazy, crazy ordeal. But I can't believe that Mary survived. When I remember reading or hearing this story at the beginning, and I was like, obviously you hear the horrific things that he's doing to her, and they're bad enough as it is. But then for her to continue and actually survive, like, you think you've just had the majority of your arms cut off. Like, how are you even getting up? Because you wouldn't know how to get up without your arms.
No.
The fact that she got up, she actually, as well, after getting up, climbing up the ravine, I believed she ran about 3 miles before finding a car.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know how you get that. I mean, it must have just been like the fight to survive.
Yeah. What a brave woman as well.
And for her to go and fight in the courts as well for justice.
Yeah, and being somebody else's voice when they can't be their own.
Yeah. And also to work with a sketch artist and get it so right that they were able to draw him and release a picture of him that someone was able to recognise.
Yeah.
I am actually gutted that there's not more on his childhood, because I would really like to know what they think the trigger was for him.
Yeah, because quite often you can delve into their childhood or their previous lives, can't you, and find something that happened.
Yeah, so they say there's like, is it a triangle? There's a word for it, isn't there? There's like 3 things that can contribute to, or signs that can contribute to a serial killer.
Oh, I've not heard the triangle analogy before.
Yeah, so there's like animal abuse.
Yeah.
Fire, I think. And then there's one more, and it might be like childhood. I'm gonna look this up and come back to you on the next episode with the specific one. But yeah, I've heard people talking about it, and it's a triangle, and there's 3 things. But we do also know that there's other things like
head injuries.
Yes, head injuries, because I've listened to a couple where they've had like a bad bike accident or something like that, and they've hit their head.
Yeah.
What else is there? There's obviously child trauma.
Yeah, and abuse. Yeah. That come up quite a lot.
I think there's always a reason. They're always able to find a reason, aren't they, as to what kind of led them this way.
I think a lot of the time, I don't know about always, like in the case that I spoke about before about Joanne, she had a good childhood, and there was nothing that they could pinpoint. But then you don't know the ins and outs of everything that's happened to them, do there? There might be something that has never been brought up, or maybe they had a head injury that they didn't deem important and it was forgotten about.
Yeah.
But it is interesting. It is interesting to delve into the psychology of why it's happened or how
Well,
they ended
actually that's actually what really interested me to begin with. And I did some like psychology and criminology in college, and I remember we did like a whole segment on the media and if that kind of contributes to people's crimes and stuff, obviously when they're playing a lot of violent games and stuff like that. And then but yeah, I just it's all about what's in there, and it's just interesting, isn't it?
It is.
I'm sure there is probably some programs on him that I definitely would be interested in watching.
Definitely not a nice man at all. So
no, none of these people are. But yeah, so that was what we're on, episode 3.
Yeah.
I definitely think our flow is getting a little bit better. And we will be back soon with Kelly's next story, which I'm super excited about. If you, like I said in the beginning, if you did love this episode, then it honestly takes 5 seconds to just leave a 5-star review on wherever you're listening to the podcast. So you can catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. And the 5-star review literally does mean everything. But yeah, I think that's it. We're trying to keep them short and sweet, as the feedback that we've had from most people is they are loving the length of time that it is, so that you can pop us on in the car on your way to work or wherever. So yeah, we shall see you again next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.